Horizon Gents, Horizon Reaction. This is Miscellaneous Myths, The Journey of Ra by the channel Only Sarcastic production. Yeah, another Egyptian mythology. Last time we saw that mythology video of Ra about Sekhmet, how she came to be the lion god from the Ra's eyes, I guess. Ra basically went senile and old and went ballistic. It was just awesome. This is follow-up to that, I guess. So yeah, the sad thing about learning Middle Egyptian is the number of people who can actually read it is so small that I can't sneak in that many proper bilingual jokes. I can always trust that someone will be able to recognize the jokes or reference I write in Japanese, but hieroglyphs are just esoteric enough that I can't assume the same here. Yeah, okay. Also, I'm not really willing to demean my knowledge of the language by writing English word in translator hieroglyphs. So here we are. Okay. That said, can you spot the never-ending story reference encoded in alphabetic hieroglyphs? It's in there, I promise. Yeah, I can't. I probably should. I'm gonna miss it. So yeah, this was this one. Remember people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the reaction, did this link in the description. Check out the cast world playlist like Holy Sarcastic production reaction. I'll upload also videos in 24 hours, so you might have missed some of them. Check that out. Check out the playlist too, like Oversimplified, History, CGP Grey, Tier Zoo. And yeah, let's do this one.
A funny thing about mythology is that, by necessity, its stories exist exclusively in the past. A modern mythology for a living culture isn't called a mythology, it's called a religion or a tradition or a belief system.
Yeah.
Mythologies are historical. Creation myths, for example, explicitly kick off how the world began, and most hero stories by necessity talk about how a hero lived and died in the past. Past tense myths are convenient for us
See, the thing about myths is, whatever myths we have right now, I think those are the myths we're gonna have. Because of the new age technology where everybody has cameras and proofs and things. I mean, look at the Scientology. They're basically founder or prophet or whatever that is. There is a photos and videos of that guy existing. So when they say this is our, prophet or God, everybody goes like, man, shut up. I have a video of this guy basically stumbling off some stair or something. So, in modern day mythologies are not going to work because everybody will have proof of some kind of it. But yeah.
Because the mythos to us already exists in the past, so we can just think of their myths as having taken place in some faraway time and place. Some mythologies also have future myths, like Ragnarok, that are expected to take place in some nebulous future time frame. And those are fine too, because we can just think of them as happening eventually. But some mythologies confuse matters by having continuing or cyclic myths that don't end in the past but continue into the present. This makes things a little complicated, because the mythos is past tense, but the myth itself is present or future tense, so when exactly we're supposed to think about it happening gets a little confused. What do you do when a mythology has a concept of eternity that outlives the mythology itself? Aside from adapting it into nifty urban fantasy premises, of course. Now, for an example of a mythology with a concept of practical eternity, ancient Egypt actually had two of them, named Renpet and He, where Renpet was a female goddess of the yearly cycle, and He or Hauhet was an ambiguously gendered representation of infinity itself. Perhaps unsurprisingly, for a culture so strongly dependent on yearly cycles of river flooding, ancient Egypt had a lot of cyclic themes. But the most well-known one is probably the journey of Ra. Now, Ra is the ancient Egyptian sun god, or rather, a sun god, because there are kind of a lot of them. For a quick rundown of some of the other contenders for the title, Aten was the sun disk whose worship outpaced Ra's under the rule of Akhenaten, Amun wasn't a sun god until he got fused with Ra into being Amun-Ra, and Horus was usually just a sky god but on occasion would be fused with Ra too. Ancient Egypt really liked remixing their gods for some reason, but the main sun god, and the one that basically everyone except Akhenaten agreed was a sun god, was Ra. Now, we've talked about Ra once before, when he took out his eye to create the vengeful war goddess Sekhmet and subsequently retired to his bark forever. This myth could be considered the sequel to that little misadventure, as it outlines what exactly Ra does in that sun bark all day every day. Or rather every night, because we know what he does during the day. He's busy being the sun after all. So Ra's sun bark sails across the sky through a river that loops through the sky and underworld, the notion being that it's one of two rivers, the other one being the Nile. The points where the river intersects with the horizon are the mountains Baku in the east and Manu in the west. They also do double duty holding up the sky. Fun fact, the hieroglyph for horizon specifically refers to the parts of horizon that the sun passes through, the gates of Ra. Anyway, so in the course of a single day, Ra sails through 24 kingdoms, each one a different hour with different rules and rulers. During the day, Ra travels through the 12 kingdoms of the day, each of which he rules. It's pretty uneventful. But things start to get interesting as Ra approaches Manu and the first of the gates of night. The sacred apes that live on Manu go nuts and mourn the death of Ra because, by the way, he's dead now. The bark passes through the gates as the sun sets, and that's where the fun begins. So the bark gets picked up by 12 goddesses of the night who start
Wait a minute, is this supposed to imply the cycle the sun go through every day? So when the sun set is actually Ra setting like that and going under underworld. Is that it? Damn, that is some creative thinking right there.
Start towing it along. Each night goddess is specifically equipped to handle the challenges of one of the 12 kingdoms of the night, and they're fairly important for reasons that will become clear at approximately 1 a.m. So the first kingdom of night is called the Watercourse of Ra, and not a whole lot happens here. It's kind of dark, but conveniently illuminated by a squad of fire-breathing snakes. The wolf-headed war god Upawat guides the boat, and Sa, the first night goddess, guards the boat from anything that might try and interfere. That takes Ra through the first hour of night and into the second, where the bark passes through a huge spiky gate guarded by 3 huge poison-breathing snakes. This is where Sa taps out and the second goddess of night taps in, opening the gate and telling the snakes to chill out for a second by invoking their real names. This kingdom of night is called Ur-Nes, or more specifically Oranos, and it's actually kind of a party. This is the part of the underworld where dead kings live, along with the gods Bes, Nepra, and Tepuin, so things are pretty sweet here. What with all the snakes and spikes and such, it's basically the afterlife equivalent of a fancy suburban gated community. Another gate, another snake, another goddess, and it's on to the third kingdom of night, affectionately nicknamed the Watercourse of the Only God, because this is where Osiris lives. This is where Osiris does all the dead people judging stuff with the help of 4 of Horus's sons, each of whom is in charge of protecting a different set of organs. And if they look or sound familiar, it's because these are the dudes whose heads are on all those canopic jars. Symbolism. Moving on to the fourth kingdom of night, we've got Living One of Forms, which is also part of Osiris's domain, but beyond that it's pretty miserable. There's nothing around but a metric buttload of, take a guess, multi-headed snakes, and also the river disappears and turns into a ravine, charmingly called
Plus with the Egyptian snakes, there are way too many snakes, man. Apophis even is the snake, right? Apophis, apparently the world ender or whatever, who's supposed to destroy everything. That's why that asteroid which is coming in August 2036 is called Apophis because of this. I mean, what's with the snake, man?
The mouth of the tomb. So in the absence of any water to sail through, the fourth night goddess transforms the bark into, no points for guessing on this one, a giant snake, yup, which carries them through the 4th hour of night. The 5th hour is just called Hidden, and it's at the bottom of the huge ravine from Kingdom 4. This kingdom is ruled by Seker, a mummified falcon god whose job it is to punish people by dunking them in a boiling lake. There's also a couple sphinxes, and you guessed it, more snakes. The far wall of the canyon is charmingly named the Realm of Night and Darkness, but despite the ominous title, something good actually lives there. Kepra, a little scarab beetle with a big job we'll talk about in more detail later. So Kepra buzzes in and lands on the still dead Ra, and the boat sails on. Kingdom number 6, the Abyss of Waters, is another Osiris place, this one in his capacity as a fertility god. The river's back, the boat is a boat again, and shockingly, this part is actually devoid of snakes. Anyway, hour 6 is also really mysterious. There's a bunch of unknown gods on the banks of the river, and there's a huge lion for some reason, and 3 shrines we're not supposed to know the purpose for, and it's just really arcane. Anyway, if you were disappointed—
Ooh, I love that, Egyptian people's creativity here. They thought about all this and they're even like, you know what, screw it. We're gonna put mystery in it. 6th hour, they're just forgotten gods that nobody knows about. There's also a giant lion. Why not? Man, this is ridiculous. This just shows, man, that people had real creativity because somebody or group of people came up with all this shit. Like, okay, sun rises and sets, so it's probably Ra dies, goes into the mountain. It's a tunnel type thing that goes to underworld. It's just ridiculous. And how many snakes were there in the ancient Egypt? That everything has snakes in it, because obviously there has to be a lot of snake infestation at the time.
By the lack of snakes in Hour 6, don't worry. Hour 7, the Secret Cavern, has snakes for days. This is where the ludicrously giant serpent Apophis lives, and Apophis is noteworthy because he makes it his personal life goal to eat Ra and consequently end the world. But luckily for everyone, the goddess Isis is ready on the bark with some nifty magic to summon a different giant snake named Mehen to fight Apophis. Selket and Horus dive off the boat to fight Apophis too. So he'll be sufficiently weakened that
Wait a minute, what was that?
and Horus dive off the boat to fight Apophis too.
Who the second god is that fight alongside Selket, I don't know, isn't actually clear. In the version I read, he was attested to be Hadusef, which is another name for Horus. Okay. However, in the Duat, this god is Set, performing what amounts to his only heroic role in the mythos. Set may be god of chaos and destruction, but he's no fan of Apophis because he desires to destroy everything. So even the chaos is like, what's the point of chaos? Is everything destroyed, I guess. Apparently in later version of this story, the second god is Set, but wearing a falcon head to look like Horus. Okay. Because ancient Egyptians liked screwing with our heads, apparently. Yeah, they just infused 2 versions like that. Like, okay, it was Set, but with, falcon head to look like Horus.
so he'll be sufficiently weakened that Isis's magic will be able to seal him away for another night. With that party over, it's on to Hour 8, the Sarcophagus of the Gods, where dead gods call out to Ra from the banks of the river. The boat is escorted by 4 rams, which apparently collectively represent Tatanen, a genderless primordial earth god. By the way, if you're noticing how many Egyptian gods are genderless, I don't actually know why this is, but among other things, a lot of gods, especially minor ones, explicitly have 2 variants of their name, one male and one female, and will be referenced in either capacity. For example, Bes and Nepra, the gods I mentioned earlier that live in the second kingdom of night, also have feminine counterparts Beset and Nepet. So that's neat. Anyway, we're in the home stretch when we reach Hour 9.
Yeah, I guess Egyptian at the time probably, wasn't like, man is everything, man, women is nothing. Maybe that wasn't the mentality at the time. So probably they are like, okay, so, man, women, both are important. So I guess they are genderless. I guess that's what the case, who the hell knows.
9, the Procession of Images, a bright and cheerful land where the dead go to receive offerings from the living. Hour 10 is similarly pleasant, called Abyss of Waters, Lofty of Banks, where the residents come down to the river to greet the bark. And hey, we got more snakes again! The Morning Star, a 2-headed snake with legs, guides the boat, and also this is the hour when the scarab Khepra merges with Ra and brings him back to life. A lot happens at 4 a.m. basically. Hour 11, the Mouth of the Cavern, is a bit of a return to underworld form in that it's rather less cheery than hours 9 or 10. The boat is towed onward by 3, 2, 1, a snake, and the whole area is red lit and kind of dismal because this is where especially bad people are tormented in fire pits by monstrous fire-breathing goddesses. Anyone who's had to be awake at 5 a.m. can confirm. And finally, Hour 12, the extravagantly named Darkness Has Fallen and Births Shine Forth, is where dawn finally breaks. Ra's not resurrected so much as he is reborn as Khepra, who is basically an aspect of Ra specifically in his capacity as the rising sun. And in case you were wondering, yes, there is a snake here. His name is Life of the Gods, and his body actually is the 12th Kingdom of Night. To end his nightly journey, Ra sails out of the serpent's mouth and into a brand new snaky day. Love of mine, someday you
36, okay.
but I'll be close behind.
It kind of bothered you that Ra's east-west journey went from left to right for most of the video, despite the fact that on the compass rose east to right, east is right and west is left. I was justification prepared.
I'll follow you
Ancient Egyptians oriented themselves south instead of north.
into the dark, no blinding light.
Capri really is that freaking looking in the paintings that show him. Okay.
Tunnels to gates of white, just our hands clasped.
He's got an entire scarab beetle stamped on his face. It's a little unsettling.
So tight, waiting for the hint of a spark.
Ra's reborn, not resurrected, which means he leaves a corpse behind. This corpse is unceremoniously dumped over the side of the bark. Classy. So Ra dies every day and gets reborn. Damn, that's heavy.
If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied.
Fun Middle Egyptian fact. Middle Egyptian, aka hieroglyphs, is a Semitic language and thus has no written vowel sounds, but Coptic, a later writing system adopted in Egypt that used Greek letters to write Egyptian words, did include written vowel sounds. Damn, okay.
On their vacancy signs,
This means that we know the pronunciation of words that were written in Coptic, but for words that were only ever written in hieroglyphs, we have no idea what vowels would have filled the spaces between the consonants. Yeah. So by convention, we insert an E wherever 2 consonants can't be. Okay, so chained together, for example, this hieroglyphs, a bilateral sign with consonants vowels is pronounced per. Okay.
Into the dark in Catholic school.
This is why some Egyptian god names have weirdly large number of E's in them. Sekhmet, yeah. Selket, Bes, Neper, Set, etc.
As vicious as Roman.
While only handful have proper vowels. Osiris, Isis, Horus, Anubis, etc. Those multi-vowel deities were the ones with names we found Coptic spellings for. Damn, so Sekhmet, Selket could have been, if there have been more, they had the Coptic spellings or whatever it's called, then names could have been a bit different. But since it's not, they just added E, so we know of them named like that, I guess.
I got my knuckles bruised by a lady.
Also, since it was pictographic ton logographic language. One of the ways they represented more complex concept was by way of rebuses and puns. If two words had the same consonants values but only one had an easy pictographic representation, the other would be written with the same pictographic character. English, this would be like writing bad with a picture of a bed or shy with a shoe. I mean, it kind of makes it easier, so why the hell not?
She told me, son, fear is the heart of love.
Ah man, so many. Obviously, this would make it hard to tell which things you were talking about, which is why Middle Egyptian used determinative soundless characters at the end of written words describing some characteristics that made the meaning clear.
If heaven and hell decide that they both
This is why names would usually end with symbols, and the seated man and woman determinative explaining that this word describes a person of the specific gender.
are satisfied.
Egyptian writings were chaotic.
The nose on their vacancy sign.
Gods of space and got their own determinatives. This for Ra, this for Amun, this for Set. Okay.
If there's no one beside you and your soul.
Damn, okay. Egyptian writings are chaotic with all the hieroglyphs and things. Damn, Journey of Ra is basically just sun setting and rising, and goes through all the phases in the hours. The 6th hour, I think, people sitting together, everybody's just sitting together thinking, what should we do? Okay, let's set some creativity here. Let's make 6th hour some, I guess, mysterious. Forgotten gods with a giant lion. We don't know what that is. There you go. So, it implies that even the people who came up with this myth, even they didn't know. So, it gives myth some credence. Like, this myth must be, real, because whoever wrote it down, even they didn't know why it was there. So, yeah. That was the Journey of Ra. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the lyrics. I did this link in the description. Check out the cast playlist. Check out the end cards, and I'll see you next time.